Hi class, welcome to Phylum Echinodermata. This will be our last invertebrate phylum that we'll cover, and then we move on to the vertebrates. You should have your note packet in front of you and filling in the information as we go through the slides. You can add additional things if you think you need to, but try to keep it simple. Don't try to write too much, just the important details. Here we have our evolutionary development of all our organisms, and echinoderms are the last ones on this branch before we talk about vertebrates. What's new for them is that they have a complete gut and their mouth is not from the blastopore. So what I would like you to write down on your notes, probably under the characteristics, is that they are considered deuterostomes. D-E-U-T-E-R-O-S-T-O-M-E, and that means that their anus develops first as the blastocyst is growing when they're first fertilized. That's the opposite of right after platyhelminthes, where it says complete gut, mouth from blastopore. They are called protostomes. So that's kind of the difference. In humans, because everything else on this branch, they're going to be considered deuterostomes. So here we have just a little history on this phylum. Fossils have been found dating back about 570 million years ago. They've found over 13,000 fossil species. Currently, there are about 7,000 species of this phyla alive. Most of them are marine, and they live on the bottom of the ocean. That's what benthic means. And they can range in size from less than a centimeter to 2 meters large. And they're divided into 5 classes, and we'll do a few details of each of the classes for you. So their name, echinoderm, means spiny skin. So if you were to look that up on your yellow cardstock, you would find that echino means spiny and derm means skin. These guys do go back to having radial symmetry. The benefit, if you remember, of radial symmetry is because they are slower movers, they are able to sense their environment in multiple directions. On the very ends of their arms, they have little sense organs that help detect movement and stuff like that. They do not have cephalization, so there's no head or brain. They have something called a water-vascular system, and we'll go into much more detail with that. They do not have excretory organs. Most of their excretory waste is released through diffusion. Like I said before, they are deuterostomes, and that means their anus develops before their mouth. And then they do have larvae that happen to be bilateral in their symmetry. This is just a common body plan for any of the echinoderms. They are typically pentaradially symmetrical, so a sets of 5 body parts around an oral disc, and they'll have their sense organs on each of these structures. Their larvae are very interesting. They have bilateral symmetry, and they are usually like sessile. They kind of sit near the adults and wait to grow, and they go through a metamorphosis. And it's kind of odd because the left side of them becomes the oral surface of the adult sea star or echinoderm, and then the right side becomes the aboral or not oral side. The larval mouth and anus disappear, the gut migrates around, changes position. It's kind of an odd metamorphosis, but that's how it works for these guys. These guys have an endoskeleton. Our last phylum, the arthropods, they had an exoskeleton. So the endoskeleton is not really made of bones like ours, but they do have these ossicles or calcareous plates. They're made of a calcium carbonate substance that helps to give them structure and the ability to move around. Sea cucumbers are in this phylum. they don't really have this endoskeleton like the rest of them do. And then for sea urchins and sand dollars, their endoskeleton is all fused. They don't have plates that are separate. As an extension off of their endoskeleton, they have these little pedicellariae. They're little pinchers on the surface of their skin, and these are actually the bumps that form on, that's what gives them the echino part of their name. And it helps them to get rid of debris that might be on the outside of them, helps them hold on to stuff. It does help them capture prey. Moving on to the water-vascular system. This system works kind of like a hydraulic system, and it's very important for several functions for these guys. It helps them move, so for locomotion, gas exchange, it helps them eat. There's sensory cells that belong to the system, so it does a lot for the echinoderms. This is a general structure of what the water-vascular system looks like. It's a little bit different in each of the classes. You will be labeling this in a future slide. It's a different diagram, but you can see how it's kind of positioned. The little bulbs are the ampulla, and there's tube feet on the ends of them. But it starts in the middle with, and actually the name got cut off, there's like a long stalk and it's labeled stone canal, and then at the top of that is a circular structure, and that's called the major porite, and sometimes they call it a sieve plate. The water goes in that area, goes in through the ring canal, and then out down all of the radial canals to lateral canals, and then out to the tube feet. There are little extra sacs coming off the ring canal. Those are called Polian vesicles, and they help store extra fluid for this whole system. And like I said before, you're going to be labeling all of this, but the lateral canals are perpendicular to the radial canals. So it starts in the middle with the circle. The ring canal comes off in the radial canals, lateral canals. You will be tracing this, the movement of this in your lab. I'll have you kind of thinking about the way that the water flows through them. And then the water gets down to the ends of their arms, and there's little bulbs. They kind of almost look like pipettes in that structure. They have a bulb that's called the ampulla, and when the sea star or echinoderm contracts the ampulla, it moves water into the tube foot, and then when they release it, it kind of creates the suction on the tube foot. So it's a neat little system they have. Here's a really cool diagram showing you the tube feet and the underside of one of these sea stars. And then basically it creates that vacuum that the tube feet can stick to stuff. Here's a diagram just showing you some of the internal structure of, this is obviously a starfish or a sea star. You will be labeling these in a different diagram shortly.